Got my head back from the machine shop today. A couple things that had done to it. First off, I magnafluxed it and pressure tested it. Magnaflux passed fine. The pressure test failed because of the oil gallery plug. This right here is the oil gallery plug. It's just an aluminum piece, and unfortunately the shop didn't know how it was in there. So what they ended up doing was just slow. They tried to do an epoxy repair to it. That didn't work. So they slowly pressed it or ground it out with a machined it out until they got to the point and could figure out that it was threaded, and then got a new one from British Parts Northwest actually. Put that guy in with a little bit of epoxy, and then that passed the pressure test. So the original pressure test was $79.50. The magnaflux was like 40 or 50 bucks. And then the repair, the shop repair, and then the re-pressure test, unfortunately, was about $200 for that guy. So that, you know, I always wondered how you would get those things out, because it never made sense to me, because when you get them in like a tri-pack, and it's just all together, and I don't know how that would work. So, but they were able to do it for me, and I'd rather them do it and know it's not going to leak, especially since it's oil. They also checked all the springs just to make sure that they were all about the same and they were consistent amongst each other. So that was good. You can see, I think, that it's nice and pretty and essentially ready for paint. Skim the head just enough to get some of the pitting off of the actual sealing surface. You can see there's a little bit of pitting here, a little bit of pitting here around where the water jacket is. And I asked them to, you know, minimize the machining that they had to do. They also went in and ended up replacing all the exhaust valves. One of the exhaust seats, and I think it was this one, had collapsed and was essentially gone. So they put a new exhaust seat in there, and ended up, because of the issues, ended up replacing all the exhaust valves. I gave them the original workshop manual, and that's what they followed. And then the exhaust guides, the bronze guides, they ordered a set of those and put all those in. For the exhaust seat and the exhaust guides, you know, there's parts cost there, and then the exhaust valves themselves, they charged me whatever British Parts Northwest charged them, so there was no upcharge for that, and I had to pay the shipping for that, obviously. And then to remove and replace the valve guides was about 28 bucks for the 4 of them, and then to fit the valve guides to size the exhaust, that was about 43 bucks. To do the one's exhaust seat installation was 40 bucks, which I thought was relatively inexpensive. You can get the seats from British Parts Northwest, which they did. Unfortunately, they only sell them in 4, so I've got 3 extras. But that surprised me that was as inexpensive as that was. And then the complete performance valve job and assembly, that was 235 bucks. So that's obviously the lion's share there. And then surfacing was 128. So out the door is 932 bucks with tax. And again, 200 of that, just 200 of that was to repair that leak. So if that leak wasn't there, we'd have been looking at $700. In my head, I didn't ask price first, because frankly, I was afraid. But in my head, I was thinking I was going to be at about $1,000. So I was happy with the repair and everything, and them getting it done. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing back in its bag and get it cleaned up and get ready for paint. Unfortunately, it's too cold down here, story of my life, so it's probably not going to get painted for quite some time. But hopefully we'll be able to get some paint on it at some point, and then get to looking at getting it on the motor. But for now, we're going to do some motor work. It's been a while. Now that I've got the head back from the machine shop, that's obviously going to have to go on at some point after I do the cam timing. But it makes me a little nervous on the stand with the head on it, because it's like top heavy, and I'm not so sure that I could rotate this thing. So I want to finish up the bottom end and get out of that essentially, and then move on, flip it around so that I can move on. So before I do this, I want to get the oil pump in, so that's going to go here. Before I do that, I want to go ahead and check all the torques. I know I've done this before when I torque them all down. I'm just going to check them again in an abundance of caution. Get the oil pump in, and then start looking at putting the oil pan in. I did use ARP bolts for both the main caps and the bearing caps. If you want to know what those part numbers are and things like that, you can refer to the video that I'm going to put up. And in that description, I've got all the particulars on the bolts, the ARP studs and stuff that I used. So the main bearing caps are 85 to 90 foot-pounds. The connecting rod caps are 55 to 60 foot-pounds. So I'm just going to go ahead and check all those out real quick. All right, one thing I forgot, unfortunately, is that front cap is got the sealing block on there, so I won't be checking those. Like I said, I'm pretty confident that these are all right, and I checked them 2-3 times. But again, This will be the last time. So now I'll go around and start doing the caps. I'm going to have to rotate the motor a little bit to get to them all, but we'll go ahead and do that. All right, I got a little bit of motion on these. So either I went right to 50. All right, rotate the motor here so I can get on the inside. All right, let's rotate this guy around. All right, everything still feels good. And now that I've got those bolts all tight, I got a little marker pen here. I'm just going to go ahead and mark the bolts just so I remember the next time that they're actually painted or they're actually tight. All right, so did I have to do that? Absolutely not. Doesn't it make me feel like a real engine builder? You're damn straight it does. All right, so next up, we'll get to the oil pump. Restored the oil pump quite some time ago. I got a video on that if you want to watch. So this is all ready to go. I've done all the measurements and everything like that. Essentially all we need to do here is bolt this puppy in. Unless I find any surprises underneath my wrapping here. No, everything looks all right. All right, so that guy's gonna bolt up. Just like that. So we got some studs that we'll put in there. I'm going to check these bolts again, just out of an abundance of caution, make sure everything's tight there, and that I put it back together properly. And then we'll go ahead and get this puppy in. All right, 3 studs that go in here. There's not a whole lot to it. That just gets bolted down. I am not going to coat these in the zinc. I'm not going to worry about that. The bolts for the oil pan I will, just because it's going to be in oil all the time. I'm not really worried about corrosion here. But there is a gasket that goes in here, which kind of surprised me, actually. I didn't think there was a gasket, but there is. So we'll get the studs in and getting them snugged up, and then check the bolts on the oil pump like I mentioned, and then go ahead and get the gasket on. All right, so we'll go ahead and put those studs in. Coarse ends go in first, or go into the block. The fine is for the bolts. A little bit of oil on here just to make sure they go in nice and easy. Which I'll have to clean that up before I put the gasket on, obviously. All right, so there's no need to make sure that these studs are like torqued in or anything like that, but I will normally go ahead and just kind of make sure that they're tight. So use the double nut method here. And just, I want to get that thing as seated as it should be. And then, like I said, I'm not really trying to get the stupid tight. So once I get it snug and I'm happy with that, I go ahead and loosen that off. And I'll do all 3 like this. And again, all I'm trying to do is get that seated, not trying to tighten it and get a torque spec or anything like that. All right, go ahead, get this oil cleaned up. Get it all degreased in here in preparation for getting some gasket sealer down and getting the gasket on there. Degreaser's on there, we'll let that dry off a little bit and then go ahead and get the former gasket down and put the gasket down. While we're waiting for that to dry, if you can see here, this is an original stand part gasket set that I got with the car. So there's the oil pump and the water pump gasket and the fuel pump gasket and the front end gaskets. I got 2 of them. So all the original old cardboard stuff here. And you can see like the oil pump gasket is almost like a metallic one, which I thought was interesting. And then just a generally better quality, thicker gaskets and different materials than just all the same stuff. So that was nice to have that. All right, ready to go here. I got the gasket set up here. I'm going to paint one side of the gasket. And if you notice the little notches opposite, because I'm going to want to flip that over. And then I'm going to paint the metal too, both sides. And then I'll do the same thing when I come around. You want to wear rubber gloves with this stuff. 1, to keep the oils out of there. And 2, because this stuff finds a place to go everywhere. Doesn't need to be real thick. Metal's painted. Now we want to paint the gasket itself. All right, got that side done. Now I'll go ahead and paint this side of the gasket. All right, and then we will paint the oil pump and get it installed. Three bolts, 3 lock washers. ½ inch. All right, and there is a torque on these, 12 to 14 foot-pounds, but obviously I'm not going to be able to get a socket in there, so I'm going to have to use a crow's foot. All right, easy enough. Go ahead and get that cool-ass Pro marker out. And there you go. So now that oil pump is in. That should be just fine. The shaft of that runs up and is operated by the distributor shaft. They share a common shaft, which is all rotated by the camshaft. I'm going to go ahead now and kind of wipe around and get the excess former gasket out of there just to keep it nice and clean. Next up will essentially be the oil pan. Cleaned out the inside of the oil pan a little bit. I didn't go crazy on it. Obviously, I don't want any chunkies or anything in there, but just a little bit of brake clean, a little bit of purple power and stuff like that, just to get the heaviest stuff out. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a hammer and dolly and just knock these bolts down a little bit flat. These you'll get raised edges here just from tightening, and it could result in a leak, so I don't want that. So I'll try to flatten those back out all the way around just to keep them nice, and then we'll be one step closer to getting the oil pan on. All right, so that's good. Doesn't take much. Just enough to try to knock them flat again. And we'll go ahead and offer it up to the bottom of the motor here and see what it looks like all the way around. All right, so just a touch uneven. You can hear it, I think. And looking at it light, looks pretty good. Nothing serious going on. Nothing that the gasket that I got for it won't probably seal up. Unfortunately, however, what I failed to recognize was that now I've got unpainted stuff on the block, and I don't want that. I'm going to have to fix that before I put that oil pan on, which in 35, 40 degree weather down here means I'm going to have to heat the garage up, which offers me not enough time to do that this evening. So that's going to be the agenda, and we'll be right back in here in a second and see what we can do about it. So I've got this surface all cleaned up. I was able to paint those couple corners that I had missed and got my gasket sanded by here. So I put some spray 9 actually on the seating surface here. I'm going to use the same old aviation forma gasket, that the Permatex stuff. I'm going to run that around there and then set the gasket down, run a coating on the gasket, put a coating on the oil pan, and then put the oil pan down, and I'll be ready to go. So instead of, because I haven't gotten to it yet with as far as being able to zinc plate all my own bolts, that's going to be coming, but it's been cold down here, and I'm still kind of getting my head straight on how to do all that stuff. I did go out to True Value and pick up just some standard bolts here so I can get this bolted down. It takes 19, unfortunately I bought 17 because I miscounted, but I'm not too concerned about it. But it'll give me enough to get the thing down and tight, and then when I get the old bolts re-zinc plated and then ready to install, I'm just going to do a 1-for-1 swap, alternating sides and all that kind of stuff, so I don't take any pressure off of one particular spot, so I don't break the gasket seal, and that should work just fine. So we're going to go ahead, get this gasket on. Couple part process here, probably going to make a mess, so I'm going to use gloves, and we'll get this the bottom end buttoned up. All right, the gasket only goes on one way, so you want to make sure that you have it the right way. So we'll get this set down. And then get all the holes lined up. So that looks good. So now we'll go over, put some more gasket seal on the top here, and I'll do also the oil pan. We'll get this thing down and get it bolted. All right, got that down. We'll go ahead and get all the bolts started. All right, so just so I could get full coverage, I did take 2 of the oil pan bolts from the old, or the existing oil pan bolts. You can see this one here's a little discolored. And that's just to make sure the gasket's tight all the way around. After I give it a couple days to cure or whatever before I go to zinc plate those, I'll take that one off. It should be fine. And now we'll just go around and snug everything up, and then we'll go to torquing. All right, everything is snug down, so next up we're going to torque it. Now you don't want to go over torquing this thing. There is a torque spec, I got to look it up, but the reason that I went back and hammered them flat, the oil pan that was, is because sometimes people will tend to want to fix the leak by just tightening it, and it essentially warps that seal, and the oil pan then won't evenly compress on the gasket. So it tells you that, even the workshop manual mentions that to flatten those out and everything, so I did that. But now we'll go around and torque it. It's probably not very much, but let's see what it is. All right, so the sump attachment, oil sump, only 18 to 20 foot-pounds, so not too much. So we got it in a 19 foot-pounds, and we're just gonna go around like I did and kind of alternate a little bit. So the one bolt that you want to be careful of is this guy here, this front one here. This sealing block is made of aluminum, so it's obviously going to be easy to strip out. Now you could put, you know, if you do strip it out, you can repair it with a threaded insert or something like that. But a lot of people will tend to over torque these two, strip that thing right out. There is not a different torque spec, but again, just kind of be careful there. So kind of walked everything up a little bit, so now we'll go for torque on them all. What the damn it. Well, sorry for my language there, but if you could, if you heard that, depending on how many beeps or whatever I put in, I just snapped that bolt inside the block. So that's not cool. It was, I will say it was tightening down a little odd, where it didn't seem like it was getting tight, but I thought it was just the compression of the gasket, and I was getting clicks everywhere except for that one, and I guess I went a little too far. So we're gonna pull this guy off, put that aside, take the gasket off, and I'll get a new gasket. Not going to reuse that. Definitely jack that block up a little bit, caused it to expand. So go ahead and we'll get this gasket sealer off of here and get that cleaned up, and then see if we can't get this bolt out. Man, that sucks. What I have here is a cheapo Harbor Freight stud extractor, or broken bolt extractor, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and use this number 3 one and a what size is it? 5/32 inch drill bit. I knocked if that'll focus, I knocked a hole in there, or a starting hole, so that I can drill and the drill doesn't float around on me. So I'm just going to try to go at it like this, a little bit at an angle, and then get that screw extractor in there. And I'm hoping that this is not in there so tight that that it won't back out relatively easy. But we're going to find out, because if this doesn't come out, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. Fortunately, however, it does not penetrate into the oil side of it. It is here, so it's on the outside of the block itself, I guess you could say. So that's at least somewhat reassuring, that if I really, really have to drill this thing out, I can, and probably put a thread saver in there. But man, I don't really want to do that. So we'll see. Hopefully we get lucky. There it comes. Well, that wasn't difficult at all. All right, well, of course, the battery died right when I was getting that bolt out, but it came out. I kind of probably made a bigger deal out of it than I should have. I don't know why that broke, though. So I put a thread tracer in there just to check the threads, and the threads are fine, but it bottoms out relatively quickly. So I might have bought incorrect bolts all the way around, so I'm going to look at that. This might be a stupid lesson learned, where I thought I was buying bolts that were short enough to work in all of them, because I know there's some of different lengths, because you've got the air breather and stuff like that for the open crankcase. So maybe I'm wrong. So I'll double check that, but now obviously I've got to get a new gasket and all that, because I don't want to reuse that gasket. I don't believe in reusing gaskets, even though I probably could on that guy, but it did get crushed and squeezed out and everything, so the cork is not as in good a shape as it was, but at least I don't have a broken bolt in my block or damage to the thread, so that's good. So we'll get some parts and we'll come back at it. So some time has passed, and you can see these black bolts here. Those are zinc plated and then black oxide plated, and they came out okay. You can see like these have a dusty white look to them. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. These definitely aren't perfect. This one turned brown, which is really interesting. But I'm going to go ahead and use them. I'm going to take a brush and just see if some of that stuff will come off, just to kind of see alcohol maybe, I don't know, just to see kind of what it is. I think obviously my plating process needs to be refined a little bit more. I think I might have had the chromate a little too hot. So I'm got everything set up again and pumping and heating up and all that kind of stuff. So I want to do more stuff, but I'm going to go ahead, and now these are the original bolts. At least they came off the car, not original to the car, I don't think, because they're kind of different branded. But whatever, I'm going to go ahead. I got new gasket from the Roadster factory, which is not cork. It is paper, thick paper, but paper. So that may make a difference for me, because I definitely felt the gasket compressing and like exuding out of the edges there. So I wasn't real crazy about that. I ordered 2 of them just in case this stuff happens again. So we'll go ahead and get all that prepped and go ahead and move along. I did get new lock washers for all of it. I'm not going to use the original ones. 1, they're in bad shape. 2, they didn't plate well. And 3, just I think you should use new lock washers, new spring washers, whatever you want to call them. So we're going to go ahead now and see if we can get this oil pan in once and for all. Got the oil pan on. As you can imagine, I'm a little bit gun shy. So I'm going to slowly, I haven't torqued anything yet, so I'm going to slowly walk the torque up here. I'm going to go to 10 foot-pounds first. The spec is 18 to 20. I'm going to go to 18, except for the very front bolt here goes into the front ceiling block that's made out of aluminum. I know the Spitfire was the same thing, but instead of going to 18 to 20 foot-pounds on that, I'm going to take it to 15. I know the torque spec changed on the later Spitfires to go to like 15, 13 to 15 or something like that. So I'm gonna derate that one a little bit just to prevent stripping that guy out. And then hopefully I won't have the same problem as I'd had before. All right, everybody's at 15, or excuse me, 10. I'm going to go to 15 and do that front bolt. Walk everybody up to 15. All right, so that's it for that one. All right, over to the one I broke. And this one should be already there. All right, there's 15 foot-pounds. So like I said, I'm going to leave the front one in the ceiling block at 15, go around, walk the rest of them up to 18, which is the low end of the spec. I'm going to leave it there, and that'll be it. All right, everybody's at 18 foot-pounds, no problems. I got some oozing, gasket maker, but that's fine. I'll go around with some alcohol and dab that up. So I don't know if that was a bad bolt maybe, and I just sheared it or what. I do have one up here that is a new one and has not been black oxided, so I'm going to try to take care of that. And otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get other bolts cleaned up. I've got the zinc plating process kind of ready to go here. Everything's up to temperature. And these oil gallery plugs, I got to do all those. The caps for the bearing retaining screws for the camshaft bearings, I got to do those. So I got several here that I can go ahead and do, but we're gonna go ahead and do that. Got another round of stuff black oxided here. The larger bolts are the oil passage that seal the end of the block. The smaller ones here with the little nubs on the end, those are for the camshaft bearings, and these are for the front plate. So definitely something practice makes perfect kind of thing. These are definitely coming out better, not having the discoloration that I did. The only place I am getting it is where the wire kind of hung up. So I'll have to see if I can figure out some way to fix that. But I got some more stuff hanging, but otherwise we'll continue on. But next up is going to now be getting the top side of the motor done, that front plate, and they do some cam timing and all that good stuff, but that's going to be for next time. So thanks so much for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.